Before we dive into our story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. If this touching tale resonates with your heart, please like and subscribe for more heartfelt narratives. Wishing you a beautiful day already. Now, sit back and let yourself be drawn into this striking story where fate tied an unexpected knot. Lily Morgan knew her 21st birthday would be life-changing, but she never imagined that change would arrive with a marriage contract, bearing her signature from before she was even born. This shocking truth was delivered to her London apartment on a cold Tuesday morning by her grandfather's lawyer, with a formality that chilled her to the bone. William Morgan, even in death, had found a way to control Lily's life from beyond the grave. "Miss Morgan," the lawyer said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "your grandfather arranged this union to secure the legacies of both families. The agreement was made when you were merely 6 years old, following your parents' tragic accident." Lily stared at the document, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Across from her name, Jonathan Blake was written in elegant script, like a seal of destiny. A man she had never met, yet whose reputation preceded him like a shadow. He was 42, a tech mogul who had built an empire from the ashes of his father's company. And according to this cold piece of paper, he was to be Lily's husband. This is medieval," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the oak-paneled office. "It is legally binding," the lawyer replied with practiced coldness. "The ceremony is scheduled for next month." That evening, Lily sat in her small music room, her fingers dancing across the piano keys in a melody that mirrored the turmoil in her soul. No, she had grown up believing in choice, in building her own future in love. Now, at 21, she was learning that her life had been bartered away like property. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. Her mother, Claire, had died in a plane crash when Lily was 6. But the mother in Lily's memory had chosen duty over desire, married for alliance rather than affection. Now history was repeating itself, and Lily felt the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine the man who was to be her husband, a journey into the unknown. Jonathan Blake was an enigma wrapped in newspaper headlines, in corporate success stories. He was wealthy, powerful, and according to the contract, he had been waiting 16 years for this moment. This thought terrified her more than anything else. Jonathan Blake stood in his Manhattan penthouse, gazing at a photograph he had kept hidden for 15 years. Claire Morgan's face looked back at him from the faded image. Her emerald eyes held the same spark he now saw in her daughter's newspaper photos. The contract lay open on his desk beside the photograph, its pages yellowed with age, but its words still binding. He had agreed to this arrangement when grief had clouded his judgment, when the world had seemed determined to tear apart everything he held dear. Now, with Lily's 21st birthday approaching, he questioned every decision that had led to this moment. His phone buzzed with updates from his security team. They had been watching over Lily from a distance for years, meticulously ensuring her safety, her education, her well-being. They reported her as a brilliant mind. She had graduated summa cum laude from Cambridge with degrees in international relations and music. She spoke 4 languages, played piano like a virtuoso, and possessed a stubborn streak that painfully reminded him of her mother. "Sir," his assistant appeared in the doorway. "Miss Morgan has requested a meeting." Jonathan's heart stopped for a moment. In all the years of preparation, he had never considered that she might want to see him before the wedding. The contract didn't require it, but perhaps this young woman had more courage than he had given her credit for. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock at the Ritz. She specifically requested a public place. Jonathan nodded, understanding her caution. She was smart enough to know that meeting her future husband in private could be dangerous, especially when that husband was a man she had never chosen. That night, Jonathan found himself in his study, surrounded by hundreds of letters he had never sent. Letters he had written to Claire over the years, telling her about the daughter she would never see grow up. He had documented Lily's first steps, her first words, her school performances, her heartbreaks. All of it addressed to a woman who existed only in his memory. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began to write. "My dearest Claire, tomorrow I meet our daughter for the first time. She has your eyes, your spirit, your fire. I pray I have the strength to give her the choice you never had." The letter joined the others in the drawer, unsent, but somehow necessary. Tomorrow would change everything, and Jonathan Blake was no longer certain he was ready for the storm that was coming, the confrontation and the unveiling of truths. The Ritz's afternoon tea service provided the perfect cover for their meeting. Lily arrived first, choosing a corner table where she could observe the room while maintaining some privacy. She wore a simple black dress and her mother's pearl necklace, the only piece of jewelry she had kept from her childhood. When Jonathan Blake entered the room, she recognized him immediately. He was taller than she had expected, with silver threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. He moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to power. But there was something else in his expression when he saw her, something that looked almost like pain. "Miss Morgan," he said, extending his hand as he approached her table. "Mr. Blake." She shook his hand briefly, noting the way his fingers lingered for just a moment too long. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." They settled into an awkward silence, the weight of their situation hanging between them like a curtain. Jonathan, with careful and deliberate movements, as if handling something precious that might shatter, ordered tea for both of them. "I suppose you want to discuss the terms," Lily said finally, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. "Actually," Jonathan said, surprising her, "I was hoping we could talk about your mother." Lily's composure cracked slightly. "My mother? I knew Claire," Jonathan said quietly. "Before she married your father, we were close." The revelation hit Lily like a physical blow. She set down her teacup with trembling hands, her mind racing to process this new information. "How close?" Jonathan's eyes met hers, and in them, she saw a depth of pain that matched her own. "Close enough that when she died, I thought my world had ended. Close enough that I've spent the last 15 years watching over you from a distance, making sure you were safe, educated, protected." "You've been watching me?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "Your scholarships, your security detail, your medical care, all of it. I couldn't save your mother, but I could save you." Lily felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything she had believed about her life, her independence, her achievements, was suddenly cast in a new light. "Why are you telling me this now?" Jonathan leaned forward, his voice intense. "Because I want you to know that you have a choice. The contract may be binding, but I won't force you into a marriage you don't want. If you choose to walk away, I'll find a way to break it." For the first time since learning about the arrangement, Lily felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Then why did you agree to it in the first place?" "Because I was a broken man who thought he could honor your mother's memory by protecting her daughter. I was wrong. Claire would never have wanted this for you." Lily studied his face, searching for deception, but finding only raw honesty. "What happens if I say no? The families go to war. Fortunes are lost. People get hurt." Jonathan's voice was matter-of-fact. "But you'll be free. And if I say yes, we figure out how to make this work. Together." Lily sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. This man, this stranger who was supposed to be her husband, was offering her something no one else ever had, a real choice. The irony was that in giving her that choice, he had also given her something else entirely, a reason to stay. The beginning of an unexpected love story. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in a small chapel in Switzerland, far from the media circus that would have surrounded a grand ceremony. Lily had made her choice, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity about the man who had loved her mother and protected her daughter. Jonathan had been true to his word. He had shown her the letters he had written to Claire, the photographs he had kept, the detailed reports from her security team that read like a father's proud documentation of his daughter's achievements. He had loved her mother deeply, and that love had extended to Lily in ways she was only beginning to understand. Their wedding night was spent in separate rooms of a quiet Swiss hotel. Both of them understood that their marriage was the beginning of something undefined rather than the culmination of romance. They were strangers bound by law and circumstance, but they were also two people who had chosen to try. Over the following months, they learned to navigate their new reality. Jonathan's penthouse became their home, and Lily transformed one of the rooms into a music studio where she could compose and practice. He would often work late into the night, but sometimes Lily would find him standing in the doorway, listening to her play with an expression of peaceful contentment. They talked often about Claire, and through these conversations, Lily began to understand both her mother and her new husband better. Claire had been trapped by duty and expectation, but she had also been a woman capable of deep love. Jonathan had been shaped by loss, but he had channeled that loss into protection and devotion. "She would have been proud of you," Jonathan said one evening as they shared dinner in comfortable silence. "How can you be sure?" Lily asked, not looking up from her plate. "Because I see her in you every day. Your strength, your intelligence, your refusal to accept anything less than honesty. She would have loved the woman you've become." It was during their 4th month of marriage that Lily discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a shock to both of them, a reminder that their arrangement had become something more intimate than either had planned. They hadn't fallen in love in the traditional sense. They had built something precious: trust, respect, and a deep understanding of each other's pain. Jonathan's reaction surprised her. Instead of the formal acknowledgement she expected, he sat down heavily and put his head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I never meant for this to happen. I wanted to give you the choice your mother never had." "Jonathan," Lily said, moving to sit beside him, "look at me." When he raised his head, she saw tears in his eyes. "I chose this," she said firmly. "I chose you. I chose us. This baby isn't a mistake or an obligation. It's a gift." For the first time since their wedding, Jonathan reached for her hand and held it tightly. "I love you," he said, the words coming out raw and honest. "Not because of your mother, not because of the contract, but because of who you are. I love you, Lily." "I love you too," she replied, surprising herself with the truth of it. "I don't know when it happened, but I do." They sat together in the growing darkness, two people who had found love in the most unexpected place, holding hands and planning for a future that neither had dared to imagine. Freedom and choice. Their daughter was born on a snowy December morning, her first cry piercing the quiet of the private hospital room like a declaration of independence. Lily held her close, marveling at the tiny fingers that grasped her thumb with surprising strength. Jonathan stood beside the bed, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "She's free," Lily replied, understanding finally what her mother had tried to give her and what Jonathan had actually delivered. "She'll never be promised to anyone. She'll choose her own path." They named her Hope, a name that carried the weight of their journey and the promise of their future. As Jonathan cradled his daughter for the first time, Lily saw something in his expression that she had never seen before: complete peace. The months that followed were a revelation. Jonathan threw himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he had once reserved for business, learning to change diapers, mastering the art of late-night feedings, and reading bedtime stories in a voice that could command boardrooms, but turned gentle for his daughter. Lily watched him with growing wonder. This man, who had agreed to marry her out of obligation and guilt, had become something she never expected. A true partner, a devoted father, and the love of her life. On their first wedding anniversary, Jonathan surprised her with a small ceremony in their living room, with only baby Hope as their witness. They exchanged new vows, these ones written from the heart rather than dictated by lawyers and contracts. "I promise to love you not because fate demanded it, but because I choose to," Lily said, her voice steady and sure. "I promise to give you the freedom to be yourself, to choose your own path, and to know that whatever you choose, I will be beside you," Jonathan replied. As they kissed, Hope gurgled happily from her bassinet, and Lily felt the last piece of her mother's legacy click into place. Claire had been trapped by duty, but she had also been a woman who loved deeply. That love had traveled through time and circumstance to give her daughter something precious. The ability to choose love over obligation, hope over fear, and freedom over the chains of the past. Later that evening, Jonathan found Lily in her music room, playing a lullaby she had composed for Hope. He sat beside her on the piano bench, just as he had learned to do over the past year, and listened to the music that had become the soundtrack of their unexpected love story. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "The choice you made." Lily stopped playing and turned to face him, her eyes bright with certainty. "Never. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could give, the power to choose. And I chose you, Jonathan Blake. I chose us." He kissed her then, soft and sure, while their daughter slept peacefully in the next room, and the snow continued to fall outside their window. They had started as strangers bound by a contract, but they had become something much more precious. A family built on love, choice, and the courage to write their own ending. In the drawer of Jonathan's desk, hundreds of letters to Claire remained unsent, but he no longer needed to write them. He had found his own story at last, one that honored the past while embracing the future. He had given Lily the choice her mother never had, and in return, she'd given him something he thought he had lost forever: the possibility of happiness. Their love story hadn't begun with a glance or a first kiss. It had begun with courage, the courage to face the past and choose a different future. And in that choice, they had found not just love, but freedom. The end. Like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love, and let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.